Welcome to Functional Medicine for Real World Impact, where we're diving into the complex, interconnected nature of health and disease, exploring not just theory, but practically what it takes to turn functional medicine insight into powerful, practical, real-world results. So please hit subscribe and let's get started. I am your host, Tracy Harrison. I am the founder of the School of Applied Functional Medicine, and I am super excited today to welcome Zoie Phillips. Zoie, I'm so grateful that you are joining us today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is so fun.
I was telling Zoie earlier that this is an auspicious occasion because we will begin interviewing some inspiring and successful practitioners who are using functional medicine to have the real world impact that we've been talking about in this podcast. And I have followed with great excitement and enthusiasm Zoie's career. She's got some wonderful stories to share with you today about her twisty, windy journey, as they so often are in getting started in using functional medicine. And I appreciate you tuning in because everyone who is considering functional medicine, what could it mean for my practice? What could it mean for me as a human being and my fulfillment? And what does the journey look like? Well, you're in luck today because Zoie's got a lot of insights and stories and wisdom to share. Zoie, again, welcome. And maybe we can just start by having you introduce yourself a bit so folks understand where you are today with this wildly successful practice that you've built.
Yes. Hello. So I'm Zoie Phillips and I'm a physician assistant and I am crazy passionate about functional medicine, as we all are here at SAFM. I am dual certified in functional medicine via SAFM and also IFM. And I've been working as a PA in functional medicine for about 6 years now. And I did start a purely telemedicine practice in 2022 called Upcurrent Functional Medicine. I see patients in North Carolina, but also Pennsylvania who are 18 and up. But I did recently hire a fellow SAFMer, and she sees patients ages 10 and up. So we're so excited about that. Right now, there's 2 providers, including myself. We have 2 virtual assistants to support us. And we also have a functional medicine nutritionist and health coach. So we're a small but mighty team.
Indeed, but a nice, diverse multimodality team as well. I want to make sure we have a chance to talk about that today. There's so many reasons why your journey, I think, is inspiring. And in particular, the fact that you chose functional medicine really early on in your career, which is a rare thing. And I will certainly say also a courageous thing. Many practitioners have already been through a different version of their practice, right? Especially different types of conventional practice. And maybe they become frustrated or disillusioned and they find their way to functional medicine 10, 15, 20, 30 years in, right? But it's almost like you knew right from the very beginning that functional medicine was your passion. And I remember even way back when you started at SAFM, you already knew that. You were crystal clear on that. And I think that's a rare and courageous decision. And I'd love for you to share a bit about what was it like in making that choice? How did it come about? What gave you the courage to make that choice? Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, certainly. So my journey to functional medicine, like you said, is not traditional in the sense that I suffered a major health crisis and was let down by conventional medicine and, healed myself. That's not necessarily my story. My family members did struggle with some health issues and my parents did seek out some holistic measures. And my family members had success. And so I did witness that. And that, I guess, really was the spark that told me, oh, we can do things differently. Our bodies can heal, and we can do that in a very, holistic way. So I suppose that was the first time that I realized, okay, food is medicine, lifestyle factors matter. And I am really intrigued to learn more about that. But as I just learned a little bit more about the different, careers in the holistic field, I was really drawn to functional medicine and decided pretty early on that I wanted to be a physician assistant because I wanted to have like all the tools in my toolbox. So before I even decided to become a PA, I knew that I wanted to specialize in functional medicine. And again, I wanted to have those tools. So I wanted to be able to diagnose and prescribe to augment the root cause knowledge and the lifestyle recommendations and the supplementation and such that I knew I would like to make. I just didn't want to be limited. So I did go through PA school, and I had a really hard time keeping my mouth shut. I was just dying to know the why, and my professors, like, they really didn't like me very much. And I look back on that and laugh, but I did it. I got through. I learned to kind of keep my mouth shut a little bit. And I graduated in 2019. And then I immediately dove into functional medicine training, and I conducted my search, and I made my little chart before anybody made a chart for me to look at. I made my own. I made calls. I, really researched, and I finally landed on SAFM, and I was really enjoying it. And I did have to start my job search, and I did start to apply to some functional medicine jobs. But as we all know, it was pretty slim pickings looking for a job in functional medicine because I didn't have experience and I really didn't have knowledge. I had maybe 1 or 2 weeks of SAFM under my belt. And I was also restricted to a certain area because my husband was in PT school at the time. And so we needed to, obviously stay in a certain area. So, if I wasn't already at like 1,000,000% sure that I wanted to practice functional medicine, I think I kind of, solidified that when I decided to apply for conventional PA positions. I knew that my chances of getting my dream job were slim. So, I sucked it up and I applied to some conventional positions. And that was just downright terrible. It was awful. And I did one interview, and I normally interview pretty well, but I bombed it. I just didn't know what to say. I lacked confidence. It was like I was in a fog. And I think the reality is I couldn't see myself practicing a type of medicine that I intuitively know was making people sicker. And I know that just translated into my interview. It leaked out of me, and without using those words.
So it came down to being an integrity issue for you then, it sounds
Yeah,
like.
absolutely. And I had received a lot of advice, from other functional medicine providers who said, you really need to start off in conventional medicine and maybe get a job in family medicine or, in the ER. I have had experience in the ER working as a scribe. And so I was already very familiar with that world and knew that was just not something that I personally wanted to be a part of. Again, I very much respect my conventional colleagues, but for me, when I lay my head down on my pillow at night, I want to be proud of the work that I'm doing, and it needs to align with me. And I just realized I can't do that. I stopped applying for conventional jobs. It did not feel in alignment with who I am and what I feel like I was called to do. And so even though I'm just a couple weeks into my training and I really don't have much knowledge about functional medicine, I prayed and I asked God, and I said, God, please work a miracle for me because I can't do this. It was a very much a turning point when I realized, I have to do functional medicine. I cannot do conventional medicine. I can't do it. So God, you're going to have to do this for me because I don't have the stuff. And then to my amazement, he did bless me with my dream job right out of the gate. And I did not see that coming. Of course, I prayed for it, but he showed up, he answered. And, again, I didn't have the experience. I didn't have the knowledge, but I had passion. And I think that is really what sealed the deal. And my former boss told me this is why she hired me. And I'm super grateful for that experience.
Hmm. That's a really inspiring story because to your point, you had, first of all, you knew who you were. You had had this experience, this passion for functional medicine since you had seen the power of it in your own family. And that galvanized your belief. And then your faith obviously was is a strong component of that for you as well. I really celebrate that because let's also talk about the fact that this was in the pandemic. Certainly, SAFM grew just hugely during the pandemic because so many healthcare practitioners were at home and had more time available, and virtual education was obviously accessible. But you were looking for a job, right? And really trying to find a high integrity fit during the pandemic. And I just celebrate that that takes courage and belief in you finding that great fit, right? Where you can really be of best service and something that makes your heart sing.
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, and it was actually just a couple months prior to the pandemic when I was job searching and accepted the position. But then shortly after, the pandemic happened, and then we had to make a switch. So I went from in-person visits to 100% virtual. And that's when I realized, oh, this went really well. I really enjoy this. And that kind of got my gears turning for what that could look like for me, down the road. So.
So even in taking the first role that you did, you had this vision of starting your own practice. And were you aware of that kind of entrepreneurial drive at that point, or did that come
No,
later?
no, not at all. I was just so enthralled and so grateful to just have the opportunity to practice functional medicine. I was not thinking about that at the time, but as we learn and grow, and as I gained experience, I just realized that there are a couple of things that I wanted to do differently. Faith is a really big part of my life, and I love offering patients prayer at the start of visits, and it's something I think about, what we know to be true about wellness and health, and it's mind, body, and spirit. And that third component to me is, in my opinion, the most important. So I really wanted to bring that into my practice, of course, as an offering. And that is something that I knew that I would be more capable of incorporating that if I were to do that on my own. So I wasn't hell bent on starting my own practice and doing my own thing. I do, my father has his own business. And so there is a little bit of family, entrepreneur mentality. And so they did kind of push me and encourage me to do that. My husband was the one who was really excited to open up his own practice. So, they really did encourage me and reminded me that, Zoe, you got the stuff to do this. But I didn't have experience. I had zero business experience, but I knew that I have 90%, 99% of what I need to help people. And, SAFM helped me to apply my knowledge. And really all that's left is 1%, or what I believe was the 1% at the time, the business side of things. Looking back, I realized, there was a lot of aspects to getting a business up off the ground. But I'm really glad that I was just passionately blind to the process at the beginning, because, if there's a will, there's a way.
For sure, for sure. I also want to celebrate your faith and being able to set up a practice that resonates with you, that brings your values to life. And then you naturally attract, right, patients who are also a great fit for that. I think it's a great example of the need for each practitioner to really decide who they are and how are each of us going to do this work in a way that makes our heart sing, that brings our values to life, where it feels uplifting and energizing versus exhausting, right? Or overwhelming. And I think your practice is a great example of that, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you. I know that this is my calling, because I might be having a cruddy day, and at the end of patient visits, I am happy, I am joyful, I am smiling, and I feel better when I get done working, not worse. I don't feel
Yes. Here,
exhausted.
here.
I don't feel just, just so fatigued and overwhelmed. I am energized from the work that I do. So you said it perfectly, and being able to kind of do things my own way and really bring, my values into the way that I work is extremely fulfilling.
That's awesome. And if I can, I want to dovetail off of what you just said, because so much of finding that energizing type of work is about helping people to get amazing results, right? Like you said, knowing that you're not just knowledgeable, you're not just sort of steeped in the science, if you will, but you're deeply skilled as a clinician. And I know you and I chatted about this before. There is a very big difference in being knowledgeable about the science and being capable and skilled in the clinical use, right? The clinical application of that science. And, I know, had just some amazing results with your patients. And it's such a key part of practitioners finding that fulfillment, right? That does allow you to feel energized as opposed to exhausted, right? At the end of a workday. Can you share a bit about that? Right? How did your training help you with that in particular? Because it can make all the difference in the world as to whether a passionate person ends up being fulfilled and doing the work and having a crazy successful business, or just being, a smart, passionate person with lots of credentials, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Mm-hmm. You're right. There is a complete distinction, because you can be so incredibly knowledgeable about functional medicine, but if you can't share that information with patients, it's useless. And I really appreciated that in my SAFM training. You know, we learned how to not only did we learn the knowledge, but learn how to share that with patients in a way that they're going to understand. So one of the things that I hear from patients is, you explain things so well. And I love that, because that has to be a part of the functional medicine process. How can you feel motivated to make changes to heal your body if you don't actually know what's going on in your body, what your root causes are? The education piece is so critical, and that's why I my visits are longer, so I can have the time to educate. And once they get it, once they understand, oh, this is what's happening, they're inherently more motivated to do the things to feel better. They are more motivated to change, some really difficult lifestyle factors. If they know about gluten and what it does to their gut, they're willing to try a gluten-free trial. So, that is pretty key. And definitely what stood out to me about SAFM in particular, it's all about the application.
And it's such the example you just gave, I think, is a really good one. The difference between telling someone to eat a gluten-free diet as a directive and hoping they comply, as opposed to teaching someone in their unique scenario the step-by-step dysfunction that is resulting from them eating gluten, and so that they understand, so they have so let me get this straight, this is how it works and this is what's happening in my body, and the galvanizing that creates, so people feel inspired and empowered to make that change, as opposed to just feeling frightened, which might motivate someone to be compliant for a while, but it's not the same as bringing in that partnership with your patients and really inspiring them to really get it deeply themselves.
Yeah, and it's really making sure that we're not coming from this paternalistic stance of do what I say because I
Here, here.
said so, because I'm the provider, because I went to medical school. That doesn't work anymore, right? And it doesn't allow you to be a partner in their health. When you explain and educate, and the patient understands, now the two of you are a team and you're working together. You have mutual understanding, and they will better trust your guidance and your support because you took the time to explain the why. I wouldn't blindly follow what my provider says without understanding the why. So I really do try to put myself in their shoes. What do I see? What do I know will help them? And how can I explain this to them so that way they, understand more about their body? But what I've learned is that they are the authority and they are deeply aware of what their own body needs to heal. And it's not my job to fix them. And it's not my job to tell them what their body is saying. I want to help them listen to it, but I also want to educate them about their body.
Yes, tell it. That empowerment, right, of giving people back their autonomy over their own body, their own being, right, is so essential for them taking the responsibility for sustainable lifestyle change. I know we joke about this sometimes at SAFM just to vent a little bit, right? But the reality is you can't go into someone's home and change their life, right? You can't make anyone do anything. And people tend to be compliant, I find clinically, only as long as maybe they're afraid or as long as symptoms are acute. But as people start to feel better and we want them to continue on this path to not just feel a little better, but to regain their vitality and start to feel great and have that be durable, compliance and fear will not get them there. They really do have to be inspired and empowered and know that it is up to them. You're going to have a partnership, like you said, right? You're going to bring the expertise. You're going to bring the recommendations and the education, but they have to be an equal partner in that relationship and take responsibility for change. And that's something each practitioner really has to earn in being a partner as opposed to, like you said, a paternalistic provider.
Yeah. I think that's easy to do when you treat them like a partner. They know about their body. They're the ones living in their body. They know, even if they're not consciously aware of their own root causes, they do have a God-given intuition about their body that I don't. And so, I always ask them, please share whatever comes to mind as we're talking about these things, because I want to tap into that tool that's better than any lab and any specialty test. And when I listen, it's always for the patient's best. And, there are always these gems that pop out that I never could have gleaned on my own. I never would have thought to ask a particular question to get that response. So I think it's really just coming in with like a mutual respect and knowing we're going to work together. And I think patients really respect that and then are more excited to take charge of their health and to make some pretty challenging changes as long as they have your support and they know why they're doing it. They're willing to do it. They're willing to put in the work. And that's when, success happens, right? Because I am not fully responsible for their health. There is a level of independence that really has to come forth from the patient. They have to be willing to make those changes. And something I always say is that, as long as you believe that your body can heal and you're willing to make the changes to help your body to heal, that's all it takes. And I am super excited to work with you. But those two things have to be true. Those are kind of like my qualifiers, if you will.
Yeah. Here, well said. And you're tapping into a lot of the sort of clinical application wisdom, as you well know, that we teach at SAFM. But the gem that you just put out there around telling people overtly that you want their intuition, you want to know their thoughts, and giving them permission, if you will, to be that equal partner in the relationship. Because in the absence of that, how likely people are, especially kind of trained with a lot of conventional healthcare experiences, people don't speak up. They don't share their intuition. They don't necessarily think that their ideas matter in the healthcare encounter. They can hold in a lot of critical information. And I chuckled when you said what they come out with can sometimes be so helpful and revealing these gems about their history or their symptoms or their experience that absent that information, it's going to be very hard to quickly and efficiently help them to get amazing results because you're going to miss key puzzle pieces. And it is an often overlooked part of being a good clinician, I find, for sure.
Yeah, I think something patients often say, is that I feel heard. And I love that, but that's the bare minimum, right? That is what every provider should do is listen. And so my heart breaks a little bit when I hear that. And I think, oh my gosh, your basic needs, as a patient have not been met thus far, and you're delighted just to feel heard. But we need to set the bar higher than that. And that's what I aim to do.
Yeah, wonderful. And I love that role model. Thank you for sharing that. I do want to talk about the business side, right? Because you were able to get some good functional medicine experience during your training, right? And then building your own practice, right, from scratch is challenging, right? And I think it's important that we speak honestly about that. Sometimes I see things in social media with talking about, oh, I built my practice overnight and it was so easy. And no, I don't think we give practitioners any service by implying that it's not hard work. It is hard work. And you absolutely have to navigate challenges and lots of uncertainty and a certain amount of risk. I'd love for you to share a little bit about what has stood out to you maybe as some of the biggest challenges in building that. And I also know everybody has some gifts and some tools and support along the way too. What has your particular path look like?
Yeah. So I would say, to your point, starting a practice is scary, and it is it was definitely a blessing to be, obviously married to my husband, who at the time had a salaried position. And so, I believe in, being brave and taking a step in faith, but we also have to be smart about it, right? What is that going to look like for us financially if, I am no longer in a salaried position? If we take a hit for a little while, how is that going to work for us? So I think having that, support and financial stability was really key. And, I think, I decided to go with the telemedicine route because for me, it felt like the best fit and allowed me to see more people. And it also kept my overhead low. I really was not set on having an in-person practice, and I knew I could still deliver super high quality care, but through telemedicine. And COVID showed me that. It actually, I hate to use the word compliance, but improved patient compliance in a sense because it was so accessible, right? They could join in for a visit from their home. And obviously we were all stuck indoors, but, after COVID, patients could be, in their car parked, in between appointments. I have a lot of busy patients, and it just really opened the door to accessibility. So I specifically chose that modality for my practice to really help to cut overhead. And I would say, maybe some challenges that popped up, or maybe expecting that I would immediately get a flood of patients because of practicing functional medicine and really experiencing such a high demand in my first position as a functional medicine PA. And so I assumed that once I just open up my practice, I'd have a flood of patients. And I will say that functional medicine is in crazy high demand, and I am very blessed and do not, we have wait list for patients. And so there is no shortage and the demand is there. But when you first get started, there is a ramp up period, and it does take time. And so there's some initial fear that creeps in there. And so I'm a Christian, and I believe that fear comes from the enemy. And so it's really, you're in a very vulnerable state, right? You have so much to offer. You've invested so much. And when you don't get a flood of patients, you're like, what's going on? Was this the right choice? But, that's when you really exercise your faith muscles and you get creative. And I think ultimately what I learned is that, if I do what I'm called to do, that work is going to speak for itself, and my patients are going to tell other patients, and word of mouth alone is so huge. And so it's just trusting that in the beginning, that growth is going to happen when you are doing what you are called to do. And so I think in the beginning, I was, I was really inclined to joining networking groups that really didn't make sense. That really didn't, I'm going to these groups and people don't know what functional medicine is. And it was really my, desperate attempt to let me do something. I don't want to sit around and twiddle my thumbs. I want patients. And I think I just got a little too aggressive with networking and that sort of thing, and maybe doing speaking events. What I've learned is that the best patients are patients who already know about functional medicine and they've already researched, and then they find me. And obviously, what a treasure, right? What a perfect scenario. But as I was, just trying to get myself out there and my name out there, I did, attract patients who maybe weren't the best fit because they were just hearing about functional medicine for the first time and weren't maybe invested, in every sense of the word, including financially in the process. And that feels that's a tough pill to swallow sometimes when you know what you have to offer, you stand by your prices, and patients aren't really interested. But I think looking back, if I just reminded myself and was just faithful in prayer and just kept in mind that I was called to do this and it's going to happen. It's just going to take some time, and it did, and it didn't take long. And so I think the first part of the process is just really rejecting the fear that will come up, from Satan saying you can't do this. People don't want to see you. They don't want to pay your prices. Why did you do this? Right? You have to really push that aside because it's quite loud in the beginning. But once you start with patients and you're in your groove and you're doing your thing and they tell their friends, then it naturally expands. And so, I definitely can, I'm a testament to that. And we have a wait list, and it's just really awesome to know that people are really excited to work with you, and I want to see them all, but I limit how many people I can see so that way I can really deliver super high quality care.
Can I jump in on that? I know that you have other things you want to share, but the pearls are everywhere here. Thank you so much for sharing. The first one I want to appreciate is the taking responsibility for the time it's going to take from a financial viewpoint. So to me, this is huge because we're adults. We have responsibilities. We have mortgage payments and kids and bills. And so it's really key to make sure you have some buffer financially. Like you said, whether that's a full-time employed spouse and you work together to make some changes in your spending habits, or you have some savings, right? It's going to be much more challenging to have the patience that you need to allow the growth and to be able to say no to that fear and keep going if you can't make ends meet. Even with cutting your expenses and budgeting and all of those things, if you are freaking out every month around how you're going to make ends meet, that is not a place of strength from which to show up to build a business. So we have to do the work to get support, whatever that might look like. And there's so many ways that you can get a financial buffer for that. But it may seem obvious, but I see a lot of people try to build a new practice. And to your point, because they assumed it was going to be fast, they put themselves in a place of kind of financial desperation, right? And that is not an attractive place to be. It really works against their beliefs and their confidence. And so I really honor that you took the time to do that, to make sure that, of course, you're still taking a risk. Absolutely, it's a risk. Absolutely, there's uncertainty, right? We have to embrace that. I think there's a middle of the road, right? There's people who don't have nearly enough of a buffer, but then there's people thinking, I need 5 years of savings. I need to pay off my mortgage. I need all of these completely unrealistic requirements before I can do the work. They tend to never do the work because it's untenable. But your story is a good example of just a sweet spot of being responsible so that the you can take the risk, but you also can still have confidence, because it does take time. And the second pearl that your story highlights is wildly satisfied patients will bring people to your practice. And you have to be in a place where you can focus fully on doing your best work early on. Because when you do a great job and you get those amazing testimonials and those referrals, then yeah, you will build a full practice and a waiting list. But to your point, it's not going to happen overnight.
That's right. Yeah, it will be organic, but yeah, it's not overnight. You can't build a practice overnight. I also think that it's pretty key to have a supportive family. And at the time, I did not have children, and I'm a newer mom. And looking back, I really am glad that I used that season of life to kind of dive in. And I certainly think that we can do amazing things even post kids. But I am glad I used that time to when that season of life to really go for it. And it is a big decision, but it's important to be on the same page with your spouse and to prepare for that. But once it starts gearing up, boy, it's amazing. It feels it's truly the best feeling to know that what you set forth is actually blossoming, that this dream that you have is actually coming to life. You almost can't believe it, but it will happen. Just like you said, once you start seeing patients and hearing their amazing testimonies, they're going to feel so good. They can't help but to tell everybody that they know. Where are they going to come? They're going to come knocking on your door. So it will happen. But yeah, it does take time.
And to your point, really supporting and engaging with those people who are passionate about it. I think another common source of overwhelm when people are desperate to build a practice too fast, to your point, they give in and let a lot of people into their practice who aren't really ready for it, or who are resistant to the commitment. They're resistant to the partnership. They're resistant to paying for it. And in many ways, that's asking for overwhelm. And working with people who are really committed to the process and committed to showing up. Like you said, those vetting kinds of values for yourself. It's not just about welcoming anyone into your practice that you can kind of convince to do it, but making sure they're a great fit so that you as a provider find that uplifting and that ease, right? And you're getting that benefit as part of your practice. I think that's essential, and it is a form of self-care, right? For making sure that you're going to love the experience too.
Right. Yeah. It's a willingness to say, this patient is truly not the right patient for me. But that requires faith that, and letting go of that like desperation that I need patients, therefore I should take on this patient. But at the end of the day, I have to put my head down on my pillow at night and feel proud of the decisions that I make. And if I, have a discovery call with someone and I know that their case is more complex than what I'm used to, and I don't have that initial confidence in saying, yeah, I know what's going on here. I can help with this. I have learned to be very clear about my limitations and say no, because I want that person. It's not about me and building my practice. Ultimately, we're here to serve people. Am I going to be the right provider for that person? Am I going to serve them best? Or am I going to hold them back from a greater capacity of healing by, in my desperation and immaturity, taking them on. I don't want that for them, So I love doing the discovery calls because it has to be a mutual fit. And we know that in functional medicine, I mean, we spend countless hours with our patients and we're really invested. I mean, I am probably too invested in my patients. I care deeply for them. And, the what you're looking for is that, long-term relationship. And, if they don't feel like the right fit, even if they are, rude or disrespectful on the phone, it's a no, right? And that means trusting that in for me that the Lord is going to provide. And I really have that's something I've really appreciated about this journey. It's really built my faith because I ultimately, there is no guarantees. There's no guarantees. There's no salaried, standard check coming in every 2 weeks. It's a big faith walk, but I've learned to let go of the reins, trust that this is the Lord's practice. He brought me to this, and He is going to bring me the right patients. And when I am fully trusting, it happens. But I'm a human, and I definitely have some stories of where I didn't trust and how that really did hurt my practice for sure.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And again, it's obviously practitioners are coming with a lot of different belief systems and a lot of different sources of faith and confidence. And I love that you lead with yours. And I think it's so important that each unique person lead with theirs in order to, it's a form of self-care. I think it's a form of self-love around making sure that it is that good fit so that it feels in integrity for you. And as something else that you have, a choice that you've made that I think is another example of caring for yourself is you built a team. And as you well know, I am a huge fan of building teams. Trying to do it all yourself is a major driver for overwhelm and exhaustion for pretty much any practitioner, even if we're trying to be a superwoman or a superman. Maybe you, if you will, please share a little bit about your journey of building a team. I love the group you've put together, like you said, kind of a small but mighty team. And I think those can build transformative practices again, when we have help, right? When we've decided we don't have to do it alone.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So in the beginning, I'm of course the, wearing all the hats, and it's manageable at first, right? You don't have a ton of patients. You can do all the things. You can take the calls. You can send the emails. You can do the charts. And then before I knew it, I am burning the midnight oil and I'm on the road to burnout. And I realized this is a problem, but, making a hire is scary, and making the first hire is super scary. And also, again, the fear creeps in. It's just me. I'm just a small practice. I don't have a manual to give this new person. They're probably going to make the manual for my practice,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So, and that actually did happen, and I'm so grateful for that. But, I realized, okay, I need to bring in some help here. And, I tried all the things. I tried to become more efficient, and I switched up the way I did things. But the reality is, I just needed an extra set of hands, an extra brain. So I did search for a virtual assistant, and I strongly recommend that because it had given me so much more freedom in my practice. And I didn't realize it, but it took so much stress off my plate trying to do all the admin tasks that, someone else is absolutely capable of doing. I don't need to do every single part of my practice, and I shouldn't, because I want to reserve my energy and my time to seeing patients. And I was limited. I was capping myself from taking on more patients because I just didn't have the manpower. So I strongly recommend, before posting publicly the position, reaching out to, even your own Facebook page and reaching out to friends. And for me, that's important because I want to know the character of the people that I'm hiring, and I want to know who they are as a human. And so that worked out really well. And yeah, it was a great decision, and it allowed me to finally expand. And then I was also more present in visits. And I had my VA scribe for me, which was such a treat. I never had a scribe before. I know we have AI scribes now, but there's kinks with that. So I personally like having someone in my visits with me. It is lovely to be able to also have two people listening to that patient to pick up on even more details that I will inherently miss. And I'm all about the details. And having, their support, ordering the, meds or supplements or, specialty tests or labs, is really such a gift. And I truly could not do what I'm doing without that help. So that was an absolutely necessary hire. Then I soon realized, I'm doing, seeing so many patients with gut imbalances that really need some therapeutic eating plans on board. And that's not really my specialty. I love nutrition and I am grateful for my, training in nutrition, but I'm not a functional nutritionist and I need one on my team. So I, did hire just a lovely gal to do that. And that really helped to elevate my practice to be able to say, I'd love for you to meet with our functional nutritionist, and she's going to talk to you all about the food component. Because let's be honest, even though follow-up visits for me are 45 minutes, we budget an hour just to make room for life and technical issues and yada, yada. But, that time goes fast. And I don't have time to go through that specific eating plan. And I want them to have tailored support. Also our functional nutritionist is also a health coach to be able to really take what we're learning in these visits and the visits with me and then put them into practice in a way that's really going to work for their life. So I was really glad to have her on the team. And then, in 2023, I became pregnant and I'm thinking, I need to hire a provider. I must hire a provider because what will I do when I'm on maternity leave? And at the time, I'm thinking, I'm going to want a long maternity leave. I'm going to really enjoy that. I'm going to want to work part time. And so I created my own urgency and my own timeline. And that, looking back, I am sad about that. I'm sad I wasn't in prayer about that because I think the Lord would have told me, you actually don't need to do that, Zoe. You actually don't need to hire a provider. And that was a time of learning for me, learning that, I am making decisions out of, again, I suppose out of fear, right? And it's never good to make decisions out of fear. So, that was one lesson I learned, a big lesson that I learned, to really listen to what the Lord has and let him lead. And again, I can't help but to talk about my faith because it impacts, it oozes into all parts of my life. And but I am truly grateful for that because I really learned when to take that next step and to make sure that is in alignment with what the Lord wants. Because the reality is, when I made that hire, he didn't bless it, and I had been receiving countless requests. And once I hired that new provider, radio silent. And that was a big shock. That was a big shock. And it was just immediately I knew the Lord wasn't in it. And so that was a tough pill to swallow. But I learned my lesson and kept my head down. And then recently had someone reach out, a fellow SAFMer, and just seeing the way that's unfolded and the ease that's come with that, the synergy between the two of us. It is so undeniable that is the Lord. So, I have made definitely some big mistakes, but I don't regret it. I think it's made me a better leader and a better entrepreneur. And also just it's strengthened my faith and has reminded me that I really need to focus on, and for me, on the Lord and let him do this, because I don't have all the answers. I don't have the master plan. I don't have a 10-year plan. I am really just seeking to walk by faith and trusting that the Lord is going to do what he wants with this practice. And I'm just trying to be obedient. And when I do that, he blesses it. And I'm loving it. So I am so excited to have this new provider. And it's just to have that camaraderie and that team is so beautiful. And, this provider, she was in, visits with me yesterday. And I had a patient who, I'm kind of scratching my head with. I'm really having a hard time with. She had some outcomes that I did not anticipate. And I asked her to share some insight. Oh my goodness, the gems that came out of her mouth. I was singing praise. I was like, yes, wonderful. And, what a gift to be able to, learn from people on the team. It's great to have that in-house. I had been a lone wolf for a long time, and I don't mind that. But boy, do I love, having a teammate. So that's been a really nice blessing.
I think your story is really inspiring, Zoe, and for me speaks to the fact that anyone, all of us, right, in building a practice are going to have what at least I would not call a mistake, but a learning, right? The blessing of a learning and some insight and the need for course correction. And to your point, I think what's also a great role model from your story is not giving up because you hire someone who doesn't work, that doesn't feel authentic, that doesn't feel true for you. And that's okay. That doesn't make any of us a failure. It doesn't mean it's not going to work. It just means this isn't going to work right now. And it's, as you shared, also just realizing, this isn't true for me. And taking that as a road sign, right, rather than a death knell, right, or any type of, I just have to give up. This isn't going to work. I know I personally have hired a number of people who didn't work out, but each time I did, I brought in really valuable learning around who I'm really looking for and what type of fit we really need. And what I love about what you shared is having the same foundational training as the provider that you've hired is also really great in terms of knowing you speak the same language and have the same priorities in clinical care, even while you have different knowledge and different expertise areas. I love that for you. And actually, if you don't mind talking about clinical insights, you mentioned the gut, which I know is a huge passion for you, right? And my goodness, so much disease begins in the gut. We could talk about this all day long, but you've been in practice for a while now, and I'm sure you picked up some important clinical pearls about the gut and how it does promote disease and maybe some dynamics that tend to be overlooked by providers or underestimated by providers. Do you have a few of those that you're willing to share? I'm certainly the practitioners listening in would love to hear from your wisdom.
Yes, certainly, certainly. Okay. Oof, I just love the gut so much, but I think we all do. So I talk a lot about stomach acid, and it's what I see as being probably the biggest root cause of gut imbalances in the small and large intestine. And, I just think it's so interesting. We've all learned about the betaine challenge, but then sometimes we forget that low stomach acid, it's not a root cause. We have to go beyond that. Yes, we got them on betaine, and yes, it's helping them, but I don't want to take betaine for the rest of my life. My patients don't want to take betaine for the rest of their life. And it's just not realistic. And it's nice for a little bit, but then they just get annoyed. And so we really got to go upstream and figure out what is causing low stomach acid. And that's really what I love most. I love helping people get to the root of low stomach acid. And so, that involves talking, of course, about eating hygiene and nutrients and thyroid function and stress, but also trauma. And that's not a fun topic to discuss, but I will share. I end up making a lot of EMDR referrals in my practice because I've even personally seen how this trauma therapy, it really helps our bodies to feel safe. So totally different than, CBT, talk therapy. Helping our body to feel safe is so critical. And it is a sensitive topic. Not everybody wants to just share their deep, dark secrets and their past in visits. But when they do, I really appreciate it when they feel brave enough to share that with me, because it matters and it's a big part of the picture. A question I always ask to kind of learn a little bit more about someone and perhaps their past is, when did you last feel really good? And it's terrible, but for a lot of my patients, I hear them say, I don't know, maybe like early childhood, or and then in my later childhood, I started to feel poorly, and I'm thinking, oh, if you started to feel unwell in childhood, what was going on in your childhood? And that is a great opener to kind of lead into these more sensitive topics, but they matter. And I really want to help patients get truly, truly at the root of their symptoms. And I can't help but to admit that trauma is going to have a major impact on our nervous system. And if our body feels like we're running from a bear, we're not going to want to stop and have a picnic and have excellent digestion. Like, you can't, that's not going to happen. So I really like to kind of start there and just, identify if that's part of the picture, because if so, we got to start there. We got to start with the nervous system, and everything else. Yes, we can mitigate. Praise God for supplements, right? That supplement what we can't get on our own or get from our food or whatever. I love that. But that's not the final answer. You can make your own stomach acid. And so I love talking about that. That's probably number one.
Ooh, let me just clarify real quick. So when you're talking about a betaine challenge, you're talking about using hydrochloric betaine, right, as a supplement in order to boost the acidity of the stomach during meals or after meals to improve digestion. Because to your point, hypochlorhydria or suboptimal levels of stomach acid is way more common than a lot of practitioners think. But the pearl you're raising around helping people to find relief by using a supplement to replace what their body may not be doing, that is not the end point of functional medicine. And a lot of practitioners start there. And then they wonder why their patients don't continue their programs, and they're not committed to the partnership, and they can't, they wander away, or they're less motivated to make progress. And a lot of practitioners are surprised when I say, helping them to get a supplement for some relief. That's like 15% of the journey, right? There's this whole other 85% of impact that we can't have if we don't go upstream from, finding a deficiency, like you said, like a digestive deficiency. And so I love the example that you're giving of trauma, but I think that wisdom is really critical for any functional imbalance, right? It's not enough to find the imbalance, but to get committed to step by step going on the journey to find the roots.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not enough just to use supplements instead of medications. That is not true functional medicine. And that's great. We can do that, and we can help to decrease side effects in using in not, utilizing medications or antibiotics. Great. But we got to go deeper, because if we don't get to the root cause, it's just going to keep coming back. And yeah, patients will walk away. And I've seen that before. If they do the betaine challenge and lo and behold, they find out I took 8 caps and I didn't feel any burning. They don't want to take 8 caps with their meals, and I don't blame them. Yeah. I wouldn't want that either.
Yeah, that's a great one. And I'm paying attention to the time. I feel like we could talk for hours. And I just want to so celebrate how your story, I think, has pointed out a lot of wisdom that other practitioners can learn from, right? Can benefit from in their own journeys. What also stands out to me is that you've been very open to this journey, right? You've said yes to the uncertainty and a natural amount of fear, but you've really moved forward on creating something that's authentic for you, that lifts you up. And if you had to pick just maybe one thing, I'm sure there are many, but just one thing in particular that you've learned about yourself, right? What's something that you've discovered along the way about you that maybe surprised you?
I mean, there's certainly a couple of things, well, a lot of things I've learned in this process, but I would say I've learned personally how integral it is for me to come alongside of patients. And as I mentioned before, partner in their healing rather than take on that role of being the functional medicine provider with all the answers. And that is so tempting at first because you have finally learned all this deep, dark, secret knowledge that's just been brought to light. And it's fascinating and it's overwhelming and it's exciting. And the light bulbs keep coming off and you just want to shout from the rooftops, I know what's wrong with you. I know what's going on. Wake up and see the light. And in a sense, you feel like I have all the answers and let me talk and let me tell you what's going on with your body. Let me uncode the mysteries of your body and decipher your own body signals. I have all the answers. And
the ego has a field day, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And also for me, it was like really early on in my training when you just, you know enough to be dangerous, right? And so you're just starting and you feel like, oh my gosh, it all makes sense. I have answers. I need to tell everybody. But what I've learned is that, that doesn't work. And it is not the way to, in my opinion, not the way to practice, because we are really not the healers. And it's the patient who is taking measures to heal themselves. And I fervently believe that our bodies are designed to heal. And I knew that, that's, really involves my faith and why I already knew that. And I was looking for something like functional medicine to help kind of support that idea. And I wanted to learn more about it. So I already know that our bodies can heal, but it's really important for me to come alongside of my patients as their partner and as their teammate and help them to better listen to their body, not tell them what their body is doing, but help them to listen to their own body. And sometimes, I really just need to shut up. I need to keep my mouth zipped and listen to them talk. I have so many stories of patients who, have, went to the grocery store and felt compelled to start eating, a bunch of oranges, or come to find out, we look at their labs and their iron is like tanked and they are needing that vitamin C to help. Or, I have so many stories of like patients who were browsing the aisles at Whole Foods and they picked out some NAC for themselves, and come to find out, we do a mycotoxin urine test, and they really need that, glutathione support and such. So, I have so many stories like that just reiterate for me that people really do know what's best for their body. They have their own God-given intuition about their body, and it is absolutely essential for me to honor that and to listen for that and to dig for that instead of trying to be the one with all the answers. And that requires me to be humble and teachable and respectful of the fact that, yeah, they're in charge of their bodies. And every time I have tried to push back, in a sense, if they bring something up and I say, I'm embarrassed by this, but if I say, I don't really know about that, right? It always bites me in the butt. It always bites me in the butt. Every time I do honor and listen to the things that they bring up, it has always paid off. And I'm so grateful that it, encouraged us to maybe look into a dynamic that wasn't even at all on my mental dashboard. So I've really learned to lean into that and really allow patients to take charge and to learn how to help them trust their gut and trust their instincts, even if they're not fully conscious of their choices or like totally knowledgeable about the exact mechanisms by which it's helping their body, to just push that in and foster that and bring that to the forefront for them. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing I've learned about myself.
And I also love just the maturity and the transparency with which you talk about something that I think any practitioner can struggle with. And especially that it can go counter to conventional training, right? Conventional practice and what gets role modeled in, residency and internships and prior clinical experience. And it's a journey to get to that place. And I'm chuckling about it because we've all lived through those moments where you're reflecting and thinking, oh, did I really do that? But also how we can make the work so overwhelming for ourselves because we feel like we have to be, the wise one, right? I forget the funny language you use, but kind of, the oracle of all the knowledge in a partnership. No wonder that's overwhelming and exhausting, right? There was a student at SAFM one time where in an open coaching call said, I thought I was creating a savvy clinical partnership, but mostly what I was creating was like a parent-child relationship where I was the parent with all the knowledge, all the direction, all the power, all the authority, and the patient was the child who I just expected to kind of like be quiet, pay attention, listen, and do what I tell you. And like you, he said, I'm mature enough now to be vulnerable to say, yep, I did that. I did that a whole bunch. And my ego had a field day, but it didn't help me to do my best work, not remotely. And all it did was exhaust me because I constantly felt the pressure of, I have to be the fixer. I have to be the wise one, the conveyor of information or the plan on my own. And the learning that you're wisely sharing is, first of all, not only is that not true, it is a major source of overwhelm. And when we yield to creating those true partnerships, we also do better work. We also get way better outcomes and the fulfillment that goes with it. That is such a great example. And I love that you have learned that in your practice and now can bring that to, the thousands of people ahead that you're going to be supporting. That's wonderful. This has been such a pleasure. I feel like we could talk for hours, but I want to celebrate your success. Thank you for the vulnerability and the authenticity of all your sharing about what's real for you and the experiences that you have had. And I wish you the best of success in the months and years ahead, especially with this new provider now opening an even bigger window of impact for you. Such a blessing all around.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. This has been so fun. Have me back all the time. I love it. Thank you.
You're so welcome, Zoe. Thank you so much.